40 times as many young people are now being diagnosed with bipolar disorder than 13 years ago.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Almost 4.5 million children in this country have been diagnosed with ADHD.
Doctors are writing a growing number of prescriptions for antidepressants for children, as many as 8 million a year.
1 in 3 children born in the year 2000 will develop diabetes.
For the first time in decades, the rate of hypertension in children is rising.
This generation of children is the heaviest in American history. An estimated 16% of all children and teenagers are overweight, 4 times as many since the 1960s.
It's kind of like we're saying in our society, we don't care about children. For all the rhetoric about kids, we're treating them as one thing, buying power consumers. And no matter what they buy, we want them to buy, even if it's going to kill them.
The sick child, as viewer consumer, has replaced the healthy child of sports, play, and make-believe.
People who are really smart, who've done a lot of research on this, are beginning to say, wait a minute, there seems to be some association here between advertising and marketing and all these problems.
I designed a study which looked at children's involvement in consumer culture, and what I found was the more media a child used, both television and other forms of media, the more likely they are to score high on a depression scale and an anxiety scale.
This is one of the very most important public health problems in the United States, if not the most important public health problem in the United States.
And one of the most disturbing of these negative health trends is the rise of illnesses linked to childhood obesity. The dark side of a kid's consumer culture that promotes junk food and sedentary media use over physical exercise.
Life expectancy of kids today will be shorter than that of their parents, the first such decline in modern times.
Over the last 2 decades, obesity rates have doubled in children and tripled in teenagers.
One of the concerns that people have with our current pandemic of obesity is that we are teaching kids to eat the wrong kind of things earlier and earlier.
The consequences of America's weight problem now extending to child safety seats. A new report says many very young children are too heavy for standard car safety seats. Manufacturers starting to make heftier models to address the problem.
And we are seeing problems that we used to never see until adulthood now in children as young as 6 or 7, such as type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is a terrible disease with lifelong implications. You die young, you die miserable.
This is not diabetes that is based on genetics. This is diabetes based on weight. Diabetes, being a chronic illness, affects people's eyes, it affects their circulation, it affects their heart. There is going to be a health care crisis, a concrete health care crisis.
Despite these concerns, regulators have not only been reluctant to address the problem, but even to acknowledge that there is one.
There are no simple solutions to this problem. Look, even our dogs and cats are fat, and it's not because they're watching too much advertising.
So you're saying advertising has had no impact on the increased obesity problem?
I'm saying that if you look for a correlation and causation, there is none.
There's no way we can really make childhood healthy in this country without a government effort. We've done it in other areas. We do it in the area of child safety. We have laws about putting helmets on kids, seatbelt laws, tobacco marketing to kids, but somehow we think it's okay to make children fair game for marketers who just want to profit from them, irrespective of the impacts on their health and well-being.
Not once have I ever heard a corporation say, let's put on the chalkboard the pluses, the maybes, the questionable impact, and here's some negatives that could come out of our product or program. I've never seen it.
If I'm a producer and distributor, I don't think it's fair for me to say, well, I don't care what the social consequences of what I do are. I'm just making a buck. I mean, we wouldn't tolerate that in a lot of other areas.
The marketing industry spin is that it's all up to parents and that parents should be the sole gatekeepers.
What about their parents, though?
The parents are responsible for the conduct of the child.
Anything a child does.
Isn't it a parent's responsibility?
Isn't it the parents' responsibility to monitor what their kids are reading and watching?
Isn't the choice of what to buy and feed kids up to parents, ultimately?
Parents can't cope with this alone. They need help. We have a $15 billion industry that is working day and night to undermine parental authority.
Responsible adults would say that, of course, parents are responsible. But if children are not with their parents 24 hours a day, if they're in school and the school is full of advertising and marketing, if they go to daycare and the daycare center is full of advertising and marketing, if someone's inviting them over to a slumber party and there's a surreptitious selling or market research going on there, I think it's asking an awful lot of parents to take all the responsibility. It's akin to an owner of a large fleet of trucks announcing that our fleet of trucks from now on is going to be barreling down the road, especially where children are, at 150 miles an hour. Parents, watch out. It's your job to take care that your children don't get hurt. No one would argue in that case that the owner of the fleet of trucks doesn't bear any responsibility at all.
In fact, the FTC and the FCC's role is to protect children when the marketplace isn't protecting them. And we have a situation now where those agencies are not fulfilling the role that they actually were given when airwaves, for example, were turned over to private corporations. So things are very out of balance.
We're the only industrialized country in the world that really doesn't have a policy about this. I have consulted and spoke to people in Ireland, in the Scandinavian countries. They don't permit this type of advertising. But usually when there is any type of debate about this, the industry brings out the First Amendment rights, okay, the Constitution. I say they're entitled to the Constitution, but they're also entitled to the shame. Shame on them. This is our future, and they know that this is wrong.
We need, in a proactive, forward-looking way as a society, to say, how is this changing us? How is this changing our environment? How is this changing our society? And do we want this?
I think that we have to look at this as an issue of rights. The rights of children to grow up and the freedom for parents to raise them without being undermined by commercial interests. In that sense, it's like the civil rights movement or the women's movement or the environmental movement. I think that we're at the beginning of a growing movement and that it takes time.
This is a lot more than about selling products and services. If we care about nourishing the human spirit, if we care about human relationships, we've got to care about this issue.